Hello everyone, I'm here to talk about the semantic SEO in a simplified way. The plan for the presentation is really simple. We're going to talk about what it is, why it works, how you can implement it, and how we can use AI to actually process these things. So first, what is semantic SEO? The best way to explain it is you can think of it as organizing all of the information on your website. A much simpler way to think about it is a more detailed on-page optimization. In on-page, we have simple things like title, alt text, URLs, headings, that's it. In semantics, we have a ton of different things. And I'll try to not look like this guy, but in 5 minutes, I might. So what are these things that I'm talking about? Imagine that this is a passage of text. On the top, we have a heading, and that's just a regular paragraph. In semantics, we care very deeply what is the first sentence, what are the words there, exactly what it contains, and in which order these words are appearing. Also, if we have a really, let's say, long text, where do we break it into different paragraphs? Since we have different paragraphs, how do we end the first paragraph and start the next one? And then also, let's say the information that goes inside the first paragraph, someone was bringing up the triples. This is really important to place in the correct order to address the heading that it is above. So let's say right here we have the first paragraph, then we have the second one. The way we start with second one and how we address the heading is a really important aspect for us. So you can already understand words that we use, where they go, in which order, is important. Once we process a single passage like this, then we want to apply that to all of other passages. You can see that we're building things block by block and ultimately sentence by sentence. Of course, we use a hierarchy for all the headings, as in, let's say, H2 would be the main aspect, H3 would be sub-aspect, or let's say a subtopic for that. This is applied throughout the entire article. We always have a different type of, let's say, of course, it's just an example. Sometimes we can go down to H5, H6. Sometimes we can have most H2 tags. There's always variations. Approximately, this is how the article will look like. And then we always have two parts. This is what we call the macro context and the micro context, or the main part and the supplementary part. The thing that is important to understand about this is the main part is directly addressing the query. This is where we need to meet all of the needs of the user. So if they have informational needs, we try to give them all the answers. If they need some kind of navigational, visual, or a functional thing where they need to book or order something, we give that in the main upper part. The bottom part, the supplementary part, is used for linking and just deepening the context. In this type of layout, we have a single article that is now completed. We apply the same principle to all of the articles on our website. As we do that, there's a clear pattern. We can see that there's a hierarchy between these articles. Some are more important and have, let's say, a different reason why we use them. Now, to just simplify this visualization, we're going to turn them into these simple circles. And this is what we call root, seed, and node. Do not, let's say, get confused by this. Just think of them as three types of articles, and they have different levels of importance. Then we build out different connections based on these principles. A more, let's say, connected representation would look something like this, or like this. As you can see over here, we have a central root article, then we have multiple seeds. These are the orange circles, and then the blue ones, these are the nodes, the small, tiny articles. This can represent the overall plan, and over here we also have, let's say, two parts of the entire content. We break it down into two parts. We call it, let's say, the core section and the outer section of the content. You can think of it as an informational content and let's say, the monetizational part, or the part where you try to commercialize it. The important part here is, let's say, in this graph, on the upper part, we have the informational one, and on the bottom part, we have the core part, or something that we would be monetizing. We want to always point links from the informational one down to the monetized part. So there is always different angles or layers how we structure this. Also, try to remember this, and I will give you a simple analogy how you can look at it. Imagine if we turn this graph vertically. You can think of it as a tree. It has a very similar anatomy. At the center, we have a root, as in root of a tree. Then it has different branches, and then it has lots of different leaves. So we have a single trunk, multiple branches, and lots of leaves. Same thing here, root, single root, multiple seeds, and many nodes. We will come back to that, so try to keep it in mind. Why this structure works, why this principle works in general. Semantics are developed by researching patterns. The current system that we are using is actually based on around 5,000 patents that are claimed by Google. Today I'm going to show you all 5,000 of them. No, I'm kidding. This is the first one. I will not go into specifics, but over here you can realize that based on the phrases that they're able to identify within your articles, they will put you in a different hierarchy in their servers. They have a different hierarchy of servers for different reasons, whether they will decide this is, let's say, good content, or this is something that they can actually use for serving. The one simple principle from this, phrases that you use are important. Based on that, they will prioritize you. Next patent is about extracting different knowledge base, or let's say extracting different knowledge information from your texts. Don't worry, this is the second patent. There's no other ones. The point here is that they look exactly at the statements that you provide. They try to extract them and store them. This allows them to do things like fact-checking. This allows them to build all kinds of knowledge panels, whereas you can see there is a knowledge panel that would come up for a person or a company or things like that. There is a ton more of different patents. These are my personal notes for different research papers. Today we will keep it really simple. And another thing why this works, I'll give you like a quick, simple analogy or example. You can think of, let's say, a school exam or a university exam. Imagine you're sitting at one of these desks and the lecturer decides to walk away. On their table, there's a sheet of paper that has all of the answers. This is a matter of your decision, whether you want to just study and figure out things on your own, or you actually can see what's right to do. And maybe it's a not fair analogy, because in universities, they actually give you information to study, and then they check you. In the case of Google, they just say, like, just write helpful content, and how do we navigate that? So this is a bit of emotional support for everyone. We can do it. Another part about semantics, the first research paper about the semantic structure was written by Sergey Brin in 1998. They have been developing the system for more than 20 years. I will share the links later on. You can check these things by yourself. Also, Bill Slavsky, he wrote the first article on semantic SEO in 2007. He also has a whole section on his website that is dedicated to semantics. I really recommend following that, because you can realize the whole evolution of that part of the search engine. Google went through so many different challenges where they had to buy different knowledge bases, they had to run different tests, and it was not working. For them to build a system that is able to meaningfully understand everything on the internet, it actually requires billions of investments, lots of different knowledge bases, and lots of engineers. And then also, of course, Koray, Tuberk, Gubur, that actually popularized this concept and brought this to life. Of course, I recommend checking out all of his videos because not many people realize how important and significant it is for our industry in general. If he would not have shared all of those researches, a massive part of the search engine would be kind of invisible for our industry, or at least very, very unclear. Now, we're slowly approaching the practical part. Please remember, this is the most important thing. The word semantic, it sounds cool and maybe it's not very clear to understand what it is. It's meaning. It's all about meanings, understanding the meaning behind the words, the phrases, what websites talk about, why do they talk about that. So this is a video that comes directly from Google. Basically, over here, they have 10,000 words that are completely random, and they're just scattered in this bubble. Then they apply different types of filterings to try to group them by the meaning. As a result, they have these type of clusters where they're able to organize, let's say, the numbers that indicate the words that indicate numbers and the words that indicate different months. This is just a 3-minute video, and they actually did it like 7 years ago. I recommend watching it because when you can see what they're able to do with words, it just raises questions what they can do with your content. It's really helpful to, let's say, start thinking. This part is maybe just an analogy for the way we process and the way we're used to looking at text. We just believe it is this white, flat wall of text, and there's no importance to it. That's not true. On the right side, you can see a kind of visual representation how algorithms can look at your content. There are different layers, there are different paradigms, and most importantly, there are different extraction zones where they pay more attention. So you can think of it as these are the points where you can press on the buttons to get the attention, or let's say to perform a better SEO. So, how you can implement it? There are 3 main aspects to semantics. The first one is a topical map. Basically, this would be a representation of a topical map. You do not need to build a kind of graph like that. In a simple way, it can be just a list of topics. So, simplest form, you just open Google Sheets, and you list different topics in a single column. Nothing too complicated. The way to do it, that's where things get a little bit tricky. You need to prioritize things, and the best way to start this prioritization is to understand what are you selling. Every website will have some kind of idea or agenda. Even if you're, let's say, a news website, you still have a goal to acquire subscribers or fans, or someone maybe, let's say you have a newspaper that you print. There is still that type of motivation. And a good analogy here is if you think of a ship in the sea. If it drops its anchor, it makes itself stationary in this specific area. That's what we want to do by identifying this specific target. Just lock yourself into a specific topic. This will protect you from a bunch of these helpful content updates and these kind of things. And primarily, I think no one died there. All right. Signs of life. So yeah, the first thing is identify what you're selling. This is what we call source context. Do not overthink it, just focus on what you're selling. Define it for yourself and always keep that in mind as you're planning and structuring things. The next part, pay attention to what topics are searched. This is important because if we are building out the topical map, or let's say the plan of topics, we want to talk about things that are being searched. We don't want to open new pages for some concepts that no one cares about and no one searches for. And then the next part, you can analyze your competitors. This is a bit more complicated part, but let's say, for example, you can check sitemaps of all of your competitors just to look for the topics that they process. It can be really helpful. And really, throughout this process, you can think of it as a game, like a video game. Let's say all of these things are different topics. let's say we identified, I'll give you an example, as if we are a phone repair company. We need to understand what's going to be our main object that we're going to focus on. Since we repair phones, it should be the phone. So now it's clear. We have our main topic that we talk about. From here, we realize that it can be connected to lots of different things. Phones have apps, games, viruses, phone cases, lots of different things. So since we repair phones, it probably doesn't make sense to talk about apps. But probably talking about something like a phone screen or a battery or its energy, or let's say the processor, is way more reasonable. That's something that actually breaks, and that's something that you have to repair. So once you follow through this process, you can connect the dots in this way. One thing affects another. Let's say if we had a phone, this will be a screen. The next one can be, let's say, a case of the phone, in case someone wants to repair that. Let's say case can affect the additional external battery, which can also break, which you can repair, and so on and so forth. So try to follow this process. We'll come back to this, but this is the overall overview. I want to give you another example about two different websites, two dentists. Let's say on the left, we have a simple site that just says, here are my services, here's my about page, here's how you contact me, and privacy policy. Another website actually explains to you what are implants, what are brackets, what is anesthesia, what kind of vitamins help you protect the health of your teeth, what is the pain tolerance in different ages and age groups, when it's good to give a surgery or receive a surgery, or in which conditions or health medical conditions you can actually do the surgery and when you cannot. And then at this point, just think for a second. What if these are not websites? What if you just went to the actual dentist and had a consultation? And the first dentist just tells you, yeah, like I can do your teeth whitening, just buy it from me. And another one actually explains everything in detail. It shows you the cases, how it works, exactly for your age, for your gender, for your medical situation, and everything else. Who is more trustable? Who feels more like an expert? This is how Google can evaluate who is actually in the business and who is just kind of there to generate leads. Another thing is contextual vectors, or to be more precise, context vector. This comes directly from patents. To not overcomplicate it, you can think of it as a structure of headings. Over here, let's say we have different headings. It's very important for us what goes into them and in which order. We want to turn all of the headings into questions. This, of course, depends on different types of articles that you write. If you have top 10 best phone cases or something like that, of course, you would not want to turn them into questions. But overall, most of the time, you have a question in the heading. This allows you to process things much easier. So once we get to this point, let's say this will turn into a vector. An important part here is you want to always ask the question about that single topic that you chose. Remember, if we're talking about the screen or the battery or something else, it always has to address that topic. Don't go into other additional things. So if we're going to look at, let's say, more practical, real example, over here you can see lots of different questions. They all repeat the same concept. You can understand that this article will be about the moon itself. Once you have done that, then it's important to prioritize them and rearrange them. This is the most important part of this speech. This will be really practical for all of the Polish audience, because most of SEOs are not aware of this. They are not doing this correctly. To reorganize them in a proper way, you need to understand that there are different meanings that these questions represent. For example, green ones, they actually identify, let's say, the moon itself. The yellow ones, they talk about the distance. And the blue ones, they talk about the visiting the moon. So you can see the concepts are slightly different. It's important that you put them all together. And then comes the next part. it's not just about putting them together, but it's also choosing the ones that are most searched or most popular and putting them at the top. Many times people think, okay, so we have a question. Is Moon considered a planet? Do I just check search volume for that? If it is being searched 1,000 times and everything else is searched the least, we just put it to the top. Not exactly. You need to check all possible queries or keywords for how people can search for the meaning of, let's say, is Moon considered a planet? There could be synonyms, there could be other phrases, longer form type of queries and things like that. And many times you need to really spend time to understand the whole bubble of keywords that's being there. You can also work with seed queries, which is a slightly different thing, but for now, we're going to keep it simple. Try to focus on this when you structure your articles. You can see a much more significant increase. The next part is briefs. The most important thing here is that we want to match the answers back to the questions. We want to use exact same words, exact same vocabulary. Do not use introductions, do not use some kind of like random jokes or things like that. Just directly address the question. Do not create any pauses or any interruptions. Another part, you can realize that we're connecting or we're introducing the next concept. You can see the first question is about what is the moon, but then we mentioned the atmosphere, just the concept itself. You can put it somewhere closer to the end of your answer, which will introduce the next question, which asks about, does it have an atmosphere? From there, we do the same with the temperature. Now, how to use AI? Looked at the wrong slide here. This is really helpful if you want to study more about how to write it in a proper way. There is actually lots of different rules, and it's going to be, unfortunately, not enough time to go through all of them, but I'll share the link in the end. How we can use AI. One of the most important things about AI, realize that it is not a super smart system that you can purely rely on. You still need to sort of fact check it and be careful with it. One of the important things here, these are the prompts that you can follow to build out the topical map. The principle here is really simple. You will try to follow this type of navigation, and you will just ask on every single step, is this helpful? Is this connected to my niche? Can I actually talk about that? Once it shows you additional different, let's say, concepts, and you learn about them, let's say there were some additional new terms or nouns or specific things that you forgot, make sure to go to any type of keyword research tool and see that there is an actual search volume for these things. Remember, do not open pages that will not have any search volume. From there, you can use these type of prompts to generate these vectors or headings. This is just about generating questions. It can give you an inspiration or just give you different ideas. And then from here, about writing with AI, of course, something like this wouldn't work. But it is, let's say, a more complex system, as if we prepare custom data, we refine it, we structure it correctly, and then we use retrieval augmented generation with fine-tuned models. It brings us way closer to having these exactly like precise, unique articles. Currently in this state, I have models like these. They're not enough to just publish them and forget about them. They still need a lot of manual revision and editing and things like that. And with that being said, this is really a simple representation and explanation of semantics. As I said, it is about the on-page, but in reality, you can apply this to link building, you can apply this to technical things, to your design, to visual things, and things like that. It is much bigger than just a simple on-site. That's it from me, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Pavel, so much. Thank you. Did you enjoy the presentation? Yeah? Thank you very much for your brilliant and practical information.
I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I'd like to emphasize a few small details. So first of all, of course, this speech is very simplified. The problem with simplification is that we have to cut off a lot of tiny details, which allows to save time, but then the overall message becomes a little bit generic or oversimplified in a way. So I hope this gives you a general understanding and the general direction that we're trying to take. But if you'd like to learn more and understand things deeper, you can do two different things. First, of course, subscribe to the channel, because there will be lots of videos that will be coming out and they'll help you understand lots of these things in a much deeper level. Second thing, you can go to serp.science and sign up for the mailing list over there. A lot of very important updates will be announced through that email list. So if you'd like to stay in touch that way, you can do it. And lastly, last but not least, I want to say a very huge thank you to an amazing person in the SEO industry. His name is Robert Niechciał. Robert was the one who invited me to give a speech in Warsaw, and this was my first presentation, my first public speech. I think for Robert it is a little bit, let's say, a risky decision, because it's always a questionable moment to try to invite new people on the stage. You never know what they will do or how they will behave. But I think things turned out quite well, and understand that you're able to see this recording thanks to Robert. So that was a very important milestone for me personally. And again, I'm very, very thankful for Robert for making that invitation. With that said, thank you so much for watching, and I see you in the next video.